Good afternoon. So thanks for the intro, Ian. So today I'm going to talk about mobile site UX and site speed benchmarking. So for those of you that work on the e-commerce side of your businesses, the relevance should be fairly clear. But can I see a hands up for who works on the acquisition side of your businesses, on advertising or search? So probably about 60, 70% of you. So I guess the relevance for you guys for this presentation is that you're responsible for driving high quality traffic to the sites. Now, if those sites don't have high performance, either in usability or site speed, they won't convert to meet the business's expectations, which means the business asks you to funnel more traffic to those sites, and you end up with a kind of a zero-sum game and diminishing returns. So it's kind of like we're all in this game together on acquisition and the conversion side to improve the experience for our users. So they have a better experience, and so they're happy to stay with us and convert. So we're all in this together. Hopefully something relevant in this presentation for everybody. I'm going to talk about the background very, very briefly to why we did this project and how we did it. And I'll also talk about then the findings. So what were the high-level findings from usability studies we did, speed studies, what happened at each conversion stage to see where the opportunities are or where the gaps are, and also case studies. So who did this really, really well? So the two performance dimensions I'm going to talk about, one is usability. And usability is something that we've kind of obsessed about for 5 to 10 years. And we should be doing fairly sophisticated testing on our assumptions about what's going to improve that usability experience. And the second one is speed. And this is something that's been fairly overlooked by most brands. And it's an important topic because none of us likes waiting. And if we wait, we get itchy feet, and we probably consider going to other sites. These are the two performance dimensions. And we have lots and lots of evidence about why these things are important to the user's experience and to the metrics they then deliver. So we know that 61% of consumers who visit a mobile-unfriendly site are likely to go to a competitor site. That's fairly obvious. It's just like a really bad retail experience in a physical world. Secondly, 30% of consumers expect a 1 second or less page load, and 18% expect it to be instantly loading. Now, if you think about what's setting those expectations, it's because mobile users use native apps. And native apps gives you the ultimate experience in responsiveness. And that's what's setting those expectations. And consumers do not see any reason why, when they switch between a native app and a mobile site, the experience should degrade in any way. And it really doesn't matter if us as businesses think, wow, those are tough targets to meet. It doesn't matter. What we're trying to do is satisfy consumer expectations. So what we did as a project, we reviewed many, many sites across 7 countries in EMEA as part of this project. And the two things we looked at was usability and speed. But the third thing, and a very important component, is the benchmarking. So as a business, this is the first time we've benchmarked sites, and we think it's important. So we can tell you how fit for purpose your site is to compete. And some sites think they do pretty well, and they found out through the benchmarking they actually don't do that well. Other sites think they do pretty poorly, but against their competitive set, they actually do pretty well and excel. And every single site we reviewed will receive a mobile performance report. And this report gives you the detailed findings from all of the usability studies we did. So we evaluated 77 separate usability principles for every site. And we give you a pass or fail on every single one of those 77 principles. So it's an extremely comprehensive report. And for site speed, we tested all the sites, and we tested all 4 of the user journey stages that a consumer would go through. And you also get the benchmarks, so you find out how you did within your vertical, within your country. Now, a request for me today is if you haven't got a mobile performance report, ask your industry manager or account manager if you have one for your brand. And if you don't, I'll give you some information at the end about what you can do about that. Okay, so what was our approach? So we wanted to be completely unbiased and completely independent. So we chose SimilarWeb, which is an external data source, to give us the lead lists for all the brands that we reviewed. So we didn't choose the brands. We got that from SimilarWeb. And that's based on sites that are top traffic sites in their countries and verticals. We used an external supplier called CX Partners to do all the usability reviews. So the reviews were independent. And we used an external tool called Web Page Test. Web Page Test is an external speed test tool. You can time the pages at whatever page and whatever journey stage you want. And it's an external tool. You can go ahead and use it yourselves. And this is a massively scaled project. So from SimilarWeb, we got 20 mobile sites for each of 3 verticals. And the 3 verticals were retail, travel, and finance. and across 7 countries. So that's UK, Germany, France, Netherlands, Spain, France, and Sweden. So it's a large study, and in total we did 316 separate site audits. Okay, so content. So I must say before we look at the findings is we saw some fantastic sites, brilliant user experiences, blazingly fast pages, but those are the minority. The majority we found need performance improvements. And I guess that's the bad news. The good news is that's where the opportunity lies. And as you always find when you do a study of this size, you kind of find a few dogs with fleas along the way. Okay, so high-level findings for usability. Travel sites did extremely well. So travel got 72%. So when we aggregate the average usability score across all travel sites across the 7 countries, they came out top with 72%. Retail came a very close second with 68%. And finance last. Now the sites, the countries that did well in travel specifically, seeing as that was a top vertical for usability, were Netherlands and the UK. So well done travel, well done Netherlands and the UK. Now Netherlands and the UK did pretty well in usability across all 3 verticals. So they were consistently good sites. But when we look at the top 20 in travel across EMEA, you see Booking.com on top, Cheap Ticket second, Tom's Cook third. When you get to the number 20 in EMEA, on the beach, they had a 78% score in usability. Booking.com, 95, 96%. That's a fairly wide gap between number 1 and number 20 in EMEA. Now you extrapolate that out to the fact that we looked at 85 travel sites, and you'll see there's a huge delta in performance. Almost exactly the same profile in retail. Top site Etsy, Debenhams, almost exactly the same delta in performance as travel. And we finally come to finance. Finance, again, similar profile, similar gap in difference in performance, but their top sites didn't score anywhere near the same as travel and retail. Now again, you extrapolate out that we looked at 138 finance sites, and you see there's a huge gap in performance. Now, obviously this isn't good news, but what is there is a lot to play for in improving your site's usability to increase the conversions and climb the leaderboard. Now, we may run this study again in 6 months' time to see how these sites have changed, taken advantage of these gaps, and climbed these rankings. Finance sites. So these were the most unusable in terms of they only scored 52% on average. That's 138 sites we looked at. That's partly because 30% of the finance sites we looked at had desktop pages. So to this point, you kind of put your finger on your chin and you say, it's 2016. You know, why are finance sites taking me from a mobile page, which is great, fit for purpose, to a desktop page, pinch and zoom, back to a mobile page, back to a desktop page. And ironically, the stage of the user journey that finance sites most took you to a desktop page on was the final conversion page, where you're signing up for a credit card, bank account, insurance plan. And you've got to wonder, you know, it is pretty bad that they're getting 30% of sites with this happening, because you look at travel and retail, it's only 3 to 4%. So that's something specifically for finance to look at. And the worst performer is the UK, so it's a bit embarrassing as a Brit. 55% of the UK finance sites we looked at had desktop pages in a conversion journey, but none of the countries did particularly well. Now you can see there are clear gaps in usability that you can exploit. And for finance specifically, it's around desktop. Okay, let's look at speed, the thing that's been under-invested in for a few years. So retail have the fastest sites in EMEA. So the numbers here represent seconds. So seconds for the page to load, for the user to perceive the page loading. At the bottom we have the scale of 0 seconds to 6 seconds. So the average retail site in EMEA loads in 3.8 seconds, which is pretty quick. But what we notice at the top is travel are the slowest. So travel's strongest in usability, they're the weakest in site speed. 5.3 seconds average page load. Germany were the fastest sites in retail, coming in at 3.6 seconds for page load. Now, Germany and France did pretty well across all verticals for site speed, just like Netherlands and UK did for usability. But if we look at our benchmark, and we're pretty aggressive in what we think is the user expectation, we actually think 0 to 2 seconds is what we classify as benchmark as good. The user's getting a very, very responsive experience. If a page takes 2 to 4 seconds to load, we classify that as poor, because you're forcing the user to wait, and you're opening up the possibility for them to switch to a competitor site. Anything over 4 seconds we classify as critical. Because why would users wait that long? I mean, seriously, you wouldn't in a retail store walk up to a customer service rep who then asks you to wait for more than 4 seconds. We looked at some sites where the pages were taking 20 seconds, 25, 26 seconds to load. It's extraordinary. Now, this is probably down to the fact that they simply don't measure page speed, as opposed to they're satisfied with it. So all the countries here in retail and finance fail a benchmark. All the retail sites we classify as poor, even though Germany is the fastest, 3.6 seconds. In finance, most of them are poor and a couple in critical. And we look at travel that are all critical. So they're averaging out at 4.9 seconds, again for Germany, the fastest, but they're all critically bad. In fact, out of 316 sites we looked at, only 14 passed the benchmark, which qualifies good. So the pages load in less than 2 seconds. And 10 of those are in retail, hence retail being the top performer in speed. Now, we saw the gap in opportunity in usability from number 1 to number 20. Now, you can see the gap in speed. The benchmark for good performance is so low, it's a huge commercial opportunity. And when we talk to our sophisticated advertisers, they always tell us they're acutely aware of the disproportionate opportunity that page speed has on conversion. They simply look at conversion pages in the conversion path. The ones with high traffic that don't convert, they measure them to see if they're slow pages, and if they are, they crank up the speed on them. Okay, let's get conversion journey. So across the top, we have the 4 conversion stages we measured, both for usability and site speed. And we have the 3 verticals below that. The numbers here represent the number of sites that scored 100% in that stage of the user journey. So for example, if we had 20 usability principles to evaluate for homepage and navigation, these are the sites that scored 100%. Now in total, 30 sites out of 316 scored 100%, which isn't bad. Because when you look at the other conversion stages, you can see only 4, 6, and 2 scored 100% in those conversion stages. So the user experience decays the further into the funnel you go, which is ironic because obviously there are more and more of a qualified customer the further into the funnel they go, but the worse experience they get. So again, where are the gaps for opportunity to exploit? Well, the biggest one is registration and conversion. So they're right at the point they're willing to give you their money, and only 2 sites are brilliant at that stage. So there's a big opportunity to exploit there. The second irony, of course, is the homepage and navigation is probably the stage that you least need to get perfect because so many customers deep link straight to product or booking pages. So 2 of the factors we looked at, apart from the 4 stages in the conversion journey, were supporting features. So for example, in this stage, how well does a device support how well does a site support multi-device and multi-channel shopping or booking? And just like homepage navigation, 30 sites scored 100%. So it's a very competitive stage to be good at. Mobile design, just like registering and conversion, only 3 sites scored 100%. So this is the kind of second point at which you put your finger in your cheek and say, it's 2016. How can we not be designing for mobile with an appreciation for mobile behaviors and how people use mobile devices and browsers? So this is the second big opportunity, registration and conversion and mobile design. So case studies. So who does this particularly well? So homepage and navigation, Etsy, which is a global retailer. What they do particularly well. We have the mobile site that we reviewed and then the desktop site. So key actions are clearly visible and not hidden within a carousel. So obviously we never advise customers never to use carousels, but they're really difficult to get right. So if you're going to do it, invest a lot of time in testing carousels. If you don't have to have one, don't put one in. Etsy get away without using a carousel perfectly well. And they also have site search present and clearly visible. So we all know the adage that, site search customers, as in on-site search customers, convert 2, 3, 4, 5 times more than customers who don't use site search. So why would you hide it? Make it extremely prominent. Again, on homepage navigation, the Netherlands finance site, Central Beheer. So the layout guides the user towards key decisions and actions for the site. So navigation and labeling is very, very simple. And the number of key elements in the main menu is limited to 5. So many times in the main menu, you swipe it open, and you have a tyranny of choice. Here we just have 5. and the desktop site and the mobile site are consistent. It's the same customer that shops across devices. They have the same experience. On-site search. So Netherlands company De Burkhoff, Netherlands retailer. Search is visible on all pages, not hidden by an icon. So not just search is visible and prominent, but you can search from any part of the site. Offers spell correct, autocomplete to get the best results. Now, a lot of these things you'd think are hygiene in terms of usability. But I guess the opportunity is lots of sites don't do it. Product pages, CRAS, Netherlands travel site. Most important information is clear and easy to use and scan. Progressive disclosure, so if you have lots of detailed product information, allow the user to expand and collapse it, so they only need to read what they want. And persistent call to actions. So these call to actions, we usually see them on native apps, which is the call to action is always visible, whether it's a primary call to action like buy this now, or a secondary call to action like add to wish list. It's always on the page when you scroll up and down. Registration and conversion, so the part of the site's and user journey stage that only 2 companies scored 100% in. So Booking.com, this is something they did particularly well. The conversion process is clear and straightforward. And selling points and purchase details are reinforced to drive completion. So Booking spent a lot of time testing. They spent a lot of time testing conversion stage. It's worth taking a look at how they do it. Multi-device and multi-channel. So this is something we expect retailers to do pretty well. So cross-device shopping. This is Heine, German site. Items can be added to wish list easily. So you can shop across devices, or you can shop across channels. Go from site to app, app to site, as a signed-in experience. And there's a click-to-call phone hotline, and users can get a call back later. So again, they're giving users choice about how they interact and how they convert with those brands. Most client engagements I go to, the clients always ask, how do we shift users from telephony just to online? And they never really ask, how do we improve the conversion rate of telephony to start with? Because obviously if you improve the conversion rate of telephony, it'll be your highest converting channel out of all your channels. So improve conversion first, and then think about how you can switch to cost save to online later. And mobile design, so the second stage where companies did particularly badly in. Only 3 companies scored 100%. Boursorama, French finance site. Field labels and form fields are visible at the same time. Again, this is such a hygiene point that we're still talking about forms probably 20 years after we started doing them. But again, lots of companies don't do it that well, especially finance sites. The appropriate keyboard is provided for data input, like number pad for dates. And icons have text descriptions to accompany them. For example, the word menu underneath the hamburger menu. So those are some sites that do particularly well at those stages of the journey. So what should you do next to act? So to summarize, for usability, fix desktop pages, especially finance sites. Monitor the usability decay as you go along the conversion funnel. Customer interactions get more important the further in you go. So the experience, if anything, should improve rather than decay. And design for mobile. These are mobile consumers. They expect a native app type experience. And double down on testing. So the best companies do the most tests, and some sophisticated companies are happy to have slower page loads because they're running so many concurrent tests, because they're getting the insights to counteract that. But double down on testing. Why? Improve the conversion and close the gap on the leaders. There is such a big gap, it's not a difficult gap to close. For speed, fix your slowest pages. So identify from the 4 conversion stages which have the slowest times and address those first. But look at page speed right across the customer journey, just like usability. And measure page speed. So lots of companies haven't even started doing this yet. But there's no excuse. There are so many free resources to learn about page speed, and there are so many free tools, like Google's Test My Site, or the one we use for this specific study, which is Web Page Test, where you can time every single page and get a detailed description of what you can fix to optimize. It should be hygiene as a process, just like usability testing is today. Remember, it's a commercial opportunity for page speed because the benchmark is so low. It's disproportionate to the effort to improve it. So what I ask you to do next, ask your industry managers or account managers, do you have a mobile performance report? If you do, you will have a comprehensive set of findings and recommendations for how you can improve your sites. If you don't, go to Think with Google and check out the vertical exec summaries we published today. So we have an exec summary for retail, one for finance, and one for travel. And it has a lot more findings than I've given you today, and a lot more case studies. And we give you lots of links to self-serve. And I guess my last point is learn from the leaders. So look outside of your immediate competitive set about who does these things well. It doesn't have to be your immediate competitive set. Thank you.